Everything Rhonda Byrne teaches, the law of attraction, ask, believe, receive, gratitude, was never meant to be separate ideas, and this video breaks down why it's actually one connected system rather than a handful of unrelated ideas. This isn't just another explanation of what she wrote, but the complete framework, everything she teaches connected into one model, laid out in the order it actually works. And it starts with one question: what if your life isn't happening to you at all? Because most of us grow up believing something very simple: life happens and then we react to it. So something good occurs and we feel happy. Something bad occurs and we feel upset. So basically, circumstances come first and feelings come second. And that seems obvious, and it's basically how everyone experiences their day. But she completely turns that idea around, and according to her, it was never circumstances first, it was thought first. For example, think about sending somebody a text message and imagine that you're sending a message in a certain tone which is a little cold and irritable. More often than not, what comes back in terms of the response is also a cold or a little defensive message. Now imagine you send the exact same information but a warm, easy and an open manner, and the usual reply, it also comes back in that same way. It's because the words weren't that different, but the energy behind them was. She says your thoughts work exactly the same way, just on a much bigger scale, and every thought you think isn't just something happening quietly inside your head, it's something you're sending out, and whatever you send out eventually comes back to you as your circumstances. Not because of magic, but because of a law she describes as being just as consistent as gravity, whether you're aware of it or not, which is the law of attraction, which says like attracts like. Now, this is usually where people, they get skeptical because it can sound like she's saying reality is not existing or that none of it is real, but that's not quite what she's claiming. And she's also not saying that the other person or the world doesn't exist. She's saying you're the one setting the tone first, and most people have simply never noticed that they're the one setting it. By the way, what I'm sharing isn't theory, it's what took me from being a lawyer to starting my own companies, making six figures in my mid 20s, and later negotiating multi-million dollar deals. Now, naturally, this raises a question that if thoughts are the message being sent, how do you actually know what tone you've been sending in? Because most of us aren't consciously monitoring every thought all day, and this is where her second principle comes in: feeling is the guide. So, for example, think about, let's say you're deciding to buy a house, and before the realtor even finishes the tour, you already have a sense of it, like something in you kind of just responds, and you just you feel that this is right, or you just know that something feels off, like just it's not connecting with you, and nobody has to explain it to you, you just feel it. She says your emotions work as exactly that kind of sense, except they're not telling you about a house, they're telling you what frequency you're currently on. So good feelings, it just means you're sending out something you want more of, while bad feelings, it means you're sending out something you don't actually want. And that's the whole test. It's not like a scale with 50 positions on it, just whether this feels good or it doesn't. And if you notice what this means, you don't need to analyze every single thought you've ever had. You just need to notice how you feel right now, because that feeling is already telling you what you've been broadcasting. And if that feeling is already telling you what you broadcast, it raises the next question that if you can feel what you're currently sending out, how do you actually change it on purpose? Because noticing it isn't the same as directing it in a different direction of what you want. This is where the most well-known structure of her comes in, which is ask, believe, and receive. The three words, they just sound almost like too simple to be a complete process, but each one is treated as doing something the others can't. So let's start with ask. For example, imagine, let's say you're ordering food at a restaurant, but instead of choosing something from the menu, you just tell the waiter, bring me something. Now the waiter has no idea what to bring you, and it's not like the waiter doesn't want to help, but because you never actually specified anything. And most people, she says, they live their entire lives ordering this way, like I want things to get better, or I want more money, or I want to be happy. These are vague requests which are being sent out constantly with nothing specific enough to actually receive. Asking, properly done, it means getting clear. Not clear about how it will happen, but clear about what you actually want. And that's the entire job of this first step. Decide specifically and just stop there, because the moment you try to figure out how it's going to happen, you've quietly stepped on to the next principle, usually without even realizing it. That next principle is belief. And this is the step she says is the hardest and also the one most people unknowingly sabotage. And I'll explain it. And let's use another example. Think about placing an order online. You pick exactly what you want, you check out, you get the confirmation. Now, do you spend the next couple of days refreshing the tracking page every few hours, convinced that it might not actually arrive? Most people, at least the ones I know, they don't do that. But at that time, all of the people, they trust the system enough to close the app and go on with their day. Believing, which is the second principle, it works the same way. And once you've asked, believing means going about your life as though it's already been handled. Not hoping, not wondering, not refreshing every page like, every hour to see if it has changed or anything has showed up. The moment you start asking, how is this going to happen? A new signal gets sent, and this one actually says that you don't have it yet and you aren't even sure you will. And that one single signal can cancel out the clarity of the ask. This is why belief is described as containing no doubt. And see, it's not about faking uncertainty for the sake of it. It's not about just doing it for the sake of it. It's actually about refusing to keep refreshing the page. That is it. By the way, if you're finding this valuable, I've done a similar breakdown for other teachers, and I will actually add the links in the description down below. It's worth checking out after this one. Now, let's come back to Rhonda Byrne, and it brings us to her third step, which is receive. And this is where most explanations of this work kind of get it slightly wrong, because people hear receive and they think it means waiting for the thing to physically show up. But that's actually backwards. Think about opening a gift on your birthday. Now, before you've even seen what's inside, there's already that feeling of excitement, that anticipation. Now, that has nothing to do with knowing what's in the box. Receiving means finding that feeling now. Feeling the way you would feel if you already had what you asked for, before any evidence of it exists. Not because pretending changes facts, but because that feeling is the frequency. And remember the message we send out? You can't consistently send out a yes, I have it tone while your day-to-day emotional state is still broadcasting, I don't have it and I'm worried that maybe I'll never even have it. Because the two signals, they cancel out each other. This is exactly why so much emphasis gets placed on gratitude, since gratitude is simply the fastest, most reliable way most people can access that already have it feeling. Because you can be grateful right now for something small without waiting for anything else to change first. I'll share something personal, something from my life, and I'll show you how it looked like. So when I was 23 years old, I was sitting with a coach who had asked me to write down everything I genuinely wanted. Not what seemed realistic, just what I actually wanted. And at that time, I was living in New Delhi in India, and I wrote things down like I want to live near a beach, I want to live with my closest friends, I want to travel often, and there was a specific income goal that I'd set for myself, and I remember writing it at that time and it felt unrealistic when I was writing that income goal down. Then I folded the paper up and I maybe read it for a few times, and then I basically forgot about it. Like, I wasn't checking it religiously every single day. I wasn't obsessively visualizing the list every single morning. I was just living my life, and every so often, without trying to, I would catch myself picturing that life. Not as something I was hoping for, but it was almost more like a description of, where things were already heading. And I think it was 18 months later, I was standing on a balcony in Dubai. I was 10 minutes away from the beach, living in a house with some of my closest friends, having traveled to maybe 4 or 5 countries in the last few months, and earning roughly 4 times the number I had written down. And standing there, looking at the skyline, I just suddenly remembered the piece of paper. And it wasn't one or two things on that list that had shown up. It was almost the entire list. And in a few places, reality had actually gone further than what I had even written. And when I look back, I don't think what changed was how hard I checked on that list. What actually changed was that somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like a wish and started feeling like a description of my life that was slightly ahead of schedule. That's ask, believe, and receive actually lived not as three separate steps that I was tracking at that time, but as one shift that happened almost without me even noticing. Now, I also want to talk about a part that usually confuses people most, which is that if asking is specific and believing means certainty and receiving means feeling it now, what happens on the days that none of all of these feels true? So for example, what if you ask for something and you immediately feel doubtful, or you feel scared, or you have thoughts like nothing's working? Now that doesn't ruin everything. I'll give you another example. For example, say a garden and you've planted certain seeds in the garden and it rains one afternoon. Do you think the rain does like undo all the planting that you've done? Or maybe like one cloudy day, do you think that will undo all the work that you've done? That no plants would come out of the seeds that you've planted? Of course not, right? A bad feeling is not proof of the process failed. It's just simply weather passing through. And what matters is the frequency you keep returning to, not whether a single moment of doubt ever shows up. Now let's actually zoom out and forget the individual principles for a moment and instead rebuild this entire model as one continuous story. So imagine you're getting ready to send someone an important message and deciding exactly what you want to say clearly, specifically, with no vague, no half thoughts. That is asking. Hitting this send button, then locking your phone and getting on with your day instead of checking every few minutes for a reply, that is believing. And the feeling you're carrying as you walk away from your phone, you're light, you're settled, you're already glad that you sent it, before you've even seen any reply at all, that is receiving. The law of attraction is simply the return message you eventually get matching whatever tone you actually sent. Day after day, whether you were paying attention to your own tone or not, and your feelings in any given moment are just you noticing what tone you're currently sending. Now, what does this actually look like on a day-to-day basis? The answer is simpler than people expect, which is to get specific about what you want, stop checking on how it's going to happen, and find a reason to feel right now the way you would feel if you already had it. Starting with whatever you can already be grateful for. That's the model, not four teachings, but one mechanism. Now, if you want a similar breakdown for other teachers like Joe Dispenza, Neville Goddard, etc., the links are in the description and on your screen, and I'll see you there.